Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear my voice. All right, good. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Currently, we have about 28 people in the chat and also attending the session. Welcome. Maybe let's give it a bit, one more minute for everyone to join. By the way, I'm Christine Hayo. I'm from the Asian Development Bank, and I will be moderating today's session. Okay, so um, what do we have for today? First, the the aim of this session is to examine how inclusive and human rights based approaches can be integrated into our local water solutions. We need to ensure how the women and girls can be given equal access to clean and safe water. In this session, we will be highlighting a few SDGs that I hope every one of us are aware. Number one is the SDG 5 for gender equality, SDG 6 for clean water and sanitation, and SDG 17 for partnerships for the goals. Again, I am Christine Hayo from the Asian Development Bank. Currently, I am working as a program management consultant for the Water Organization's Partnership for Resilience. What we do with the bank is we partner utilities around the world, specifically in Asia, and they work on mutual problems and create solutions and partnering throughout a duration of 12 to 18 months. It is also we also have a project linking partnering water organizations, such as what we have currently is the Laguna Lake Development Authority partnering with a water authority as well in the Netherlands. So basically, what we will be tackling today is partnerships and how we can empower women and children to be represented more in the society and in the community. So, again, it's my pleasure to be your moderator for today. It is my second year. I don't mind Sifal getting me as moderator again for next year. Hint, hint. All right, so before we begin, I know we presented the house rules, but let me just quickly run it. Number one, please keep your microphones off or muted throughout the session unless you are invited to speak. You may also submit your questions anytime through the Q&A box or through the chat box, well, whichever is easily accessible for you. We encourage everyone to remain respectful and professional at all costs and in all interactions. And lastly, this session is recorded for documentation and also educational purposes. All right. So again, thank you. And without further ado, let us begin our program. Now we have about 32 attendees. All right. That's a good number. So, to formally welcome our participants, it is my pleasure to introduce our opening speaker. Joining us today is Dr. Ebru Janansukulu of the CIFAL Global Network at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, or UNITAR. So, Dr. Ebru is a senior international civil servant and an expert in sustainable development. She currently serves as the associate head of the CIFAL Global Network and as Deputy Director of UNITAR's Division for People. She is also leading the Global Water Academy, where she is advancing training and capacity building initiatives related to SDG 6 on water and sanitation. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Ebru for her opening remarks. Over to you, Dr. Ebru.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues. I hope you all see me and hear me without any problem. So thank you very much, Kristen, for this kind introduction. It's a genuine pleasure for me to join you today, this year again. I thank dear Dr. Michelle Pullenburg, the director of CIFA Philippines, who has been coordinating this webinar and the training series for quite a long period of time in a sequence. So it's really a great pleasure for me to be here and to join on behalf of UNITAR and also CIFA Global Network as the deputy head of the network. So today our team is Water for All, integrating gender responsive approaches to water security. This year, as we all know, for the UN water system was the Gender and Water Year. The theme of this year's discussions around the UN water system-wide strategy was particularly around gender and gender responsive approaches to water security. So I congratulate again for organizing this session. I would like to start greeting the distinguished speakers joined this afternoon. Attorney Chrissy Shafina Tila Rubin of the Commission on Human Rights, Ms. Masa Cora Esther Raluga for Valencia City Water District, as well as our moderator, Kristen Hayo, and Dr. Michelle Pulimberet, and all the team. Water, I have just returned from the High Level Political Forum in New York. And this year's High Level Political Forum around the United Nations system was particularly focusing on SDG 6. So therefore, it's extremely important for us to be cognizant of, the international commitments around SDG 6, and where the international organizations, member states, civil society organizations, and several other stakeholders have been committing to the accomplishment of SDG 6 around the world. So it is not only a discussion around that part of the world where we are having this webinar right now, but I know that there are participants from different parts of the world and the speakers, I myself being based in Geneva. So we all commit to the achievement of SDG 6 in different capacities that we all and the responsibilities that we all are tackling with. So we know what more than 1 billion women worldwide still lack access to safely managed drinking water. And 1.8 billion, according to the statistics and the recent data, 1.8 billion people do not have drinking water on their own premises. So this is around 1/4 of the entire international community. This is a very severe statistics. And it is not only, of course, about drinking water, it's about sanitation, it's about urban development, it's about health systems, and of course, the provision of healthcare and several other services to the communities, to the states, to the institutions. Almost in 2 out of 3 households, so if we count around our immediate neighborhood, 2 in every 3 households without water on site. And it is women and girls who bear the burden of the collection, dear colleagues, dear friends around the world who are joining today. So this is a very time-consuming task. This is extremely energy inefficient and, of course, physically demanding, often dangerous. So almost half of the international community of the member states, so fewer than 50 countries, have laws, right? So we don't have enough jurisdiction and legal frameworks, policies that tackle explicitly and that recognize explicitly women's participation in water resource management. And today, some of almost 14% of countries still have limited or no mechanisms to ensure women for participating equally in water-related decision-making. We have very limited number of experts, researchers, super underfinanced in the water sector. So this is a composite global challenge that unfortunately is felt and extremely lived through at the local and individual level. So these are, of course, not statistics that I want to share with you. If we start sharing the statistics, we'll start losing our times and losing our focus. But I want to leave you today in these opening remarks with some of the keywords that I think we should all keep in our mind and leave through this webinar and the capabilities and capacities that these sessions and this training will leave with us. First one that we should nail in our minds is it's a lost opportunity. It is a severe structural inequality. As the global water community, we have the responsibility to correct. And this is our focus today in this particular webinar. And we need to concentrate on the inclusiveness, human rights-based approaches that needs to be integrated into local water solutions. I was very happy to hear before the webinar we started, there are around 100 experts that joined today, or those participants who aspire to become an expert in this sector. So this is not only, of course, SDG 6 that I draw your attention. It's about SDG 5 on gender equality and definitely on SDG 17 on the essentiality of the partnerships. So it's not a problem of women and girls, it's a community problem. And it's about equal participation in decision making and decision implementations, not only the water services that are provided by predominantly in different setups by women and girls, but it is about the equality and effectivity for everyone in our ecosystems, right? And today we will hear about how unequal access to water disproportionately affects women, girls at the households, community levels. Also, we will hear and learn about the institutional repercussions of these disproportionate effects and consequences. We are at Unitar Global Water Academy. We have one commitment. Our commitment is to train not only individuals, but to build capacities and capabilities for institutions and, of course, for governments and for international community. I'm very proud to lead the Unitar Global Water Academy, and we are very committed within the UN system-wide strategy on water and sanitation alongside 36 other UN sisters, brother agencies. Our main focus is to build capacities across the world. And together with other education institutions within the UN system, namely UNESCO, United Nations University, and several other partners, we carry out the capacity development initiative. We carry out investments for water interactive dialogue together with World Bank and IFAD. So it is not only about committing through training services, educational services, but it is also about creating investments, generating resources to achieve SDG 6. We know SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, is the least financed, or in other words, is the most underfinanced SDG among all 17. But it is one of the most critical ones, right? When it comes to the accomplishments, it is the most critical not only for the life and the livelihoods of communities of individuals, but also the continuation of several services ranging from textile industries to healthcares to chemicals and you name it. Very wide range of industries are affected dramatically with the shortage of access to water. So it is also a great responsibility for primarily the industries and the countries to generate and to regenerate water resources, to finance, to mobilize resources. And then we will, of course, move on to the discussions on the transformative rights-based approaches. Access to water is the most fundamental human rights, dear friends. So we really need to concentrate on SDG 6, concentrating on its indicators and targets. But of course, we should always keep in mind and repeat and renew our call for partnerships with all different sectors, all the experts around the world, because we know, particularly for gender equality, we know, and this is not only the slogan of 2026, Beyond Water Ecosystem, where water flows, women lead, and equality grows. This is our motto. In policy making, in practices and praxis, in investments, in academic outputs. So I'm very glad to be here on behalf of UNITAR Global Water Academy and the CIFAL Global Network. We have an exemplary success of CIFAL Philippines that is hosted by the University of Philippines. Our dear director, Dr. Michelle Parumblut, is leading a wonderful team of dedicated people on the Sustainable Development Goal achievements and particularly on the water governance. So I thank you very much. We will continue bridging our commitments with you, with this within this ecosystem and in your ecosystems. So for those of you who are interested in, we have an unique SDG 6 course that we created together with the custodian agencies. It is in English. It is accessible through digital platform, Unitar's digital platform. Please join us. And we welcome everybody to continue this dialogue on gender equality and water governance. So once again, dear colleagues, dear friends from different parts of the world, welcome to this seminar. And it's a great privilege for me to join you on behalf of UNITAR Global Water Academy and CIFAL Global Network. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ebru. I mean, the ratio and the water is, the statistics for women and girls not being able to access clean and safe water is highly disproportionate. I mean, if we're just talking about investments, I can tell from experience that again, it is one of the highest receiving benefactor of investments and highly critical as well. But there's still a lot of work to be done. And then when you talked about lost opportunity, in the last session, in the last year's session about water and women, we talked about and we've been very engaged about approaches of local water utilities in engaging their women and children as well in their in a way services or service delivery. So I mean, it was a very engaging session, and I hope that we'll have the same level of engagement as well in this session. Again, Dr. Ebru, thank you for that. So next, we will hear from Attorney Chrissy Shafina Twyla Rubin. That's a very long name, Attorney Shafina, but if I may, I'll just call you Attorney Twyla. So, Attorney Twyla is a human rights advocate and a feminist lawyer with the Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines. She is also an officer-in-charge director of the Human Rights Policy Center Office. She previously headed the Commission's Center for Gender Equality and Women's Human Rights for 10 years, wow, where she advanced policy and programs on gender equality, gender-based violence, and the rights of persons and diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression and sex characteristics. Okay, so Attorney Twyla holds a law degree from Bukidnon State University College of Law. So I assume you can makasabot kang Bisaya, Attorney. She also holds a master's in women and development from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, an LLM in Law and Gender from SOAS University of London as a Chevenix scholar. She is a board member of the Women's Legal and Human Rights Bureau and a co-founder of Bailaya, a feminist NGO focusing on marginalized women and girls. When not bike touring with her wife, Twyla spends time with her 4 cats and 3 dogs. Over to you, Attorney Twyla, for your presentation.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Hayo. And thank you for once again inviting me, Sifal. And today I'm going to speak on the gender dimensions of the human rights to water. So allow me first to share my screen. Thank you. It's Sona here, or the State of the Nation address in Quezon City. So usually at this time of the year, signal would be intermittent. So I'm really hoping that the signal will hold all throughout my session. No? It's going to be around 15 to 20 minutes, and I'm going to go through the gender dimensions of the human right to clean water. I'll start with a little bit of statistics, but I'm sure that our previous speaker has already given us some of the important statistics, and the speaker after me will also share more statistics. And then after that, I'll share with you the human rights standards when it comes to water as a human right, going through the different conventions that the Philippines signed and ratified, and also some general recommendations and general comments that would be relevant on water as a human right. So I'll begin now. So these are just some global data, and this I got from UN Women. Just to go through them quickly, we know or we already know that women and girls are disproportionately affected when it comes to issues of water. In fact, in this data, it shows 1 in 4 women and girls still lack access to safe drinking water. This is globally. More than 2 in 5 women and girls lack access to proper sanitation. And today, 380 million women and girls, nearly 10% globally, live with high or critical water stress. It is also stated that by 2050, that number is projected to increase to 674 million in across 33 countries. When we say that there are gender dimensions of the right to water, we think about different issues that women face, the impact of gender roles and burden of reproductive labor, reproductive work, care work, including gathering of water on women, and also in their access to water and enjoyment of adequate standards of living. We think about the risk of sexual harassment and violence for women who would have to walk through many distances to gather or to collect water. There's period poverty. This is a specific experience to women menstruating, and then the need for hygiene and also access to water. Also the need for clean water during childbirth. These are just some of the gender issues that would intersect with the right to water. And also, of course, we know the importance of WASH for women. We see this in times of disaster. For us in the Commission on Human Rights, when we visit places of detention, we see as well the impact of the absence of WASH in terms of the enjoyment of rights of persons deprived of liberty. So when we look at WASH, we look at access to water, sanitation, hygiene. So it includes water that is safe, affordable, sufficient, and able to meet people's need. Sanitation would be those services that dispose of human waste safely. So one of our centers in the Human Rights Policy Center's office is focusing on monitoring humanitarian conditions, especially in times of disaster and also in armed conflict. And this is one of the things that they will look into. And also hygiene practices like hand washing, menstrual hygiene, that reduce health risks and support people's comfort and dignity. So when we look at access to water, we also look at access to and enjoyment of WASH. And then another data, it states, according to UN Women, 156 million girls aged 10 to 19 still lack access to basic hygiene services globally, compromising their health, dignity, education, and adolescent girls are less likely to participate in school, work, social activities during menstruation. More and more, in fact, in our discussion on the comprehensive anti-discrimination bill, there's already talk about also including the issue of menstruation as part of a protected status, because there are some who are, because they are menstruating, they experience discrimination. So now with that introduction on data, I will now go through the different international frameworks when it comes to right to water. I know you might be familiar with some of this, but we'll just go through. So where do we find the right to water in our international human rights document? So if first we look at our Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we don't see there right to water, but we do have Article 25, which states adequate standards of living, and it includes decent life, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care. And if we look at as well our International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, you would see under Article 11 of that convention, adequate standards of living again. And so it states that the state parties who signed the covenant, including the Philippines, should recognize the right of everyone to adequate standards of living. So that includes having adequate food, adequate clothing, housing, and to the continuous improvement of living conditions. So state parties are also accorded or required to take steps to realize these rights, recognizing to this effect essential importance of international cooperation. Article 12 is also related because it states it also includes the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. Aside from ICSCR, or the International Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, we also see the right to water as provided under Article 14 of the CEDAW, or the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. In its article, particularly on rural women, it provided that the states who signed the covenant or the convention should ensure that it will eliminate discrimination against women in rural areas, and that part of it should ensure that women should have the right to adequate living conditions, particularly in relation to housing, sanitation, electricity, water supply, transport, and communications. So not just under CEDAW, we also have under the International Convention on the Rights of the Child, another provision on highest attainable standards of health. And this will be applicable and relevant to girl children. So Article 24, again, provides that the state party should recognize the rights of the child to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standards of health, and to facilities for the treatment of illness, rehabilitation of health, and it should include or pursue full implementation of this right. In particular, it shall take appropriate measures to combat disease, malnutrition, including within the framework of primary health care, and then particularly the provision of adequate nutritious food, clean drinking water, taking into consideration the dangers and risk of environmental pollution. So we have 3 treaties at least that mentions the right to water, and we also particularly look at General Comment 15 on right to water. So what is a general comment? Usually when a state signs a treaty or a covenant, it is required to submit its report to that committee periodically, around 4 years to 5 years, to report on its compliance on the treaties. Part of the duty of the committee is also to issue guidance in terms of how the treaty should be interpreted. So General Comment 15 is a general comment that expounds on the right to water, and it was issued in 2002. And I'm going to go through what General Comment 15 provides when it comes to right to water. So there's a recognition that it is a limited resource and a public good, and it's fundamental for right to life and health. There's a recognition that there's an interconnectedness with the right to water, to the right to health, and also right to life. So it also provides that the human right to water entitles everyone to safe, sufficient, acceptable, physically accessible, and affordable water for personal and domestic uses. It is essential for securing adequate standards of living, and it is fundamental for the conditions of survival. And then it's also stress that it is inextricably linked to the right to highest attainable standards of health. So if you look at General Comment 15, it provides the normative content on the right to water. So it shows us how we are going to assess if we are able to enjoy the right to water by looking at these different normative content. It looks at availability. Is it sufficient, and is there continuous supply? It also look at quality of the water that you are able to access. Is it safe? Is it free from chemicals and health hazards? And then there's also accessibility. It looks into physical accessibility. Is it within safe and physical reach? Is it affordable when it comes to economic accessibility? It also looks at non-discrimination. Is it accessible to all, including those who are marginalized? And then is there access to information so that people can seek, receive, or impart information in relation to water? So there's another one that's missing here in terms of, I know, quality is already there. So usually you have AAAQ in terms of the normative content on the right to water, and which is also the normative content used to assess different rights under economic, social, cultural rights. So the right to water, according to General Comment 15, also looks at both freedoms and entitlements. So it looks at access to water supplies. It also looks at a system of water supply and management, and it also sees water as a social and cultural good, and it should be adequate in order to have human dignity, to live a life of dignity, and to have uh, and health as well. So then after General Comment 13, specific to gender, General Comment 15 also provides that whereas the right to water applies to everyone, states parties should give special attention to those individuals and groups who have traditionally faced difficulties in exercising this right. So it enumerates children, women, those in rural and deprived urban areas, indigenous peoples, nomadic travel communities, refugees and asylum seekers, prisoners and detainees. As I mentioned before, they are particularly at risk, no, and difficulty in accessing water and wash. Groups with physical difficulties such as older persons, persons with disability. So there's already an intersectional lens when it comes to Comment 15 on right to water. So it also provided that that the state should ensure that women are not excluded from decision-making processes concerning water resources and entitlements. There's also an early recognition that the disproportionate burden women bear in the collection of water should be alleviated. There's also a recognition already of the disproportionate impact of women's care work and reproductive labor, including collection of water and women's access to water and the risks that they face while accessing water. It also provided that indigenous people's access to water resources on their ancestral lands should be protected from encroachment. So these are some of the things or guidance that General Comment 15 on right to water issued in 2002 provides. No, and if you also look at the state obligation when it comes to right to water, we looked at the three core obligations of states when in terms of human rights. First is for the obligation of that state to respect. That is, the state should refrain from interfering directly or indirectly with the enjoyment of the right to water. The obligation to protect in case there are violations from third parties or entities that interfere in any way with the enjoyment of water, then the state should be able to provide effective remedies for such interference or such violation. And the state should be able to adopt necessary and effective legislative and other measures. So this could include laws, legislations, policies that would protect individuals' access to water and provide remedies in cases of violations, and then fulfill obligations to facilitate, promote, and create an enabling environment so that the right to water would be enjoyed without barriers and obstacles. So also under General Comment 15, the committee provided a list of what should the state do in order to fulfill the right to water. So there are several of them, and these are obligations that should be of immediate effect. Um, First is to ensure access to minimum essential amount of water that is sufficient and safe, ensure right to access to water and water facilities in non-discriminatory manner, no? So there's a non-discrimination principle. Ensure physical access to water facilities or services that are able to provide sufficient, safe, regular water, sufficient number of water outlets to provide prohibitive waiting times, and at reasonable distance. There's also a requirement that the state to ensure personal security is not threatened while having to physically access water, right to equitable distribution of all available water facilities and services, the adoption of a national water strategy and plan of action to address the whole population. So these are just some of the guidance provided by General Comment 15. Additionally, to monitor the extent of the enjoyment of the rights, to adopt low-cost targeted water programs to protect vulnerable and marginalized groups. And this is where, these water programs, the importance of having as well consultation with the affected groups and the affected communities, to take measures to prevent, treat, and control diseases linked to water. So these are from General Comment 15. And of course, if you look at the timeline in terms of the recognition of human rights, water, and sanitation, we look at one of the key start would be the issuance of General Comment 15 on the right to water and the appointment of the special rapporteur or the independent expert on the right to water. Subsequently, there are more developments now with the issuance of the report by the special rapporteur, the adoption of the SDG, particularly SDG 6 on water, and then there's also a key development that we also consider important, the issuance of a General Assembly resolution in 2022, particularly on the human right to safe drinking water and sanitation. Here, in this resolution by the General Assembly of the United Nations, it states that to ensure access to safe and affordable drinking water, adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all, as well as menstrual hygiene management, including for hygiene facilities and services in public and private spaces. So it also reaffirms the right to safe drinking water and sanitation as components to right of adequate standards of living. And I think relevant to gender, it would be that it includes elimination of inequality in access, prioritize provision of safe drinking water, and ensure that it's accessible to all. In terms of women, to empower women and girls for preparedness in cases of emergencies by ensuring access to water and sanitation and implementing gender-responsive policies. So in terms of General Comment 15, as I mentioned above, the gender dimensions could be seen in terms of its provision on non-discrimination, physical safety and accessibility, privacy and dignity, and then decision-making and participation. One last general comment I'd like to share would be general recommendation by the CEDO Committee on gender-related dimensions of DRR in the context of climate change. Here, it recognizes that in many contexts, gender inequalities limit the control that women and girls have over decisions governing their lives. And this includes access to resources such as food and water. And it also highlights that there is evidence that effects of food, land, water insecurity are not gender neutral, and that women are more likely to suffer from undernourishment and nutrition. And additionally, it recognizes that women are disproportionately affected by lack of available, affordable, safe, accessible drinking water and fuel. So it has recommendations for the state to ensure gender-responsive access to safe water, focus on the gendered impact of climate change on women, highlight the need for women's participation in water management. There are also several recommendations of GR 37, promoting women's access to equal rights to food, housing, water, etc., increasing resilience to the impact of disasters and climate change among women by identifying and supporting livelihoods that are sustainable and empowering, and developing participatory gender-responsive development plans and policies that integrate human rights-based approach as well as gender, no? And priority should be given to ensuring accessibility of services for all women. So General Recommendation 7 is another key document that will be able to guide us, no, in terms of right to water. So on the part of the CHR, I'm just going to share that the Commission has been conducting a series of consultation on the ASEAN Declaration on the Right to Safe, Clean, Healthy, and Sustainable Environment, because they're going to develop a regional plan of action. And during our consultation, a lot of women human rights defenders spoke and provided their inputs, including access to right to water and the protection of resources. So much of the inputs of that we were able to gather is for the state and for the regional plan of action to ensure there is access to information, right to participation of marginalized groups in the discussion of a healthy environment, including access to water. There should also be discussion on access to remedies and accountability. If there are going to be violation, if a dam is going to be established or a development project is going to be established, there should be accountability mechanisms. There should be protection of marginalized groups, including women, protection of human rights defender, and the integration of indigenous knowledge systems and practices in governance of natural resources. So in terms of UN Women, there are also insights that it provided in terms of ensuring a gender perspective on water, and it enumerates and also is adopted by the Commission on Human Rights, upholding women's human rights at all times, promoting women's leadership, investing in women in water and sanitation infrastructure that is closer to homes to reduce time constraints, educate communities to reduce stigma around menstruation and hygiene, and of course, addressing unpaid care work on women and being able to redistribute it, including the collection of water. On the part of the Commission on Human Rights, I leave us with these reflections. One is, how do we continue to pursue intersectional approaches so that access to water and right to water, we will be in the access to water and right to water, we will be able to look into the impact of different social identities and contexts, and we'll be able to address that so that we can ensure access to water. How do we look at gender roles and norms in Philippine society and their impact on access to water, and how do we address this in terms of programs and policies? And then lastly, how gender and other intersectional issues are rendered visible and addressed in policy and programming. Lastly, how do we leverage Magna Carta of Women, particularly its provisions on women in the marginalized sector, in order to ensure and fully fulfill women and girls' right to access to water? And with that, thank you. And I think we went a little bit over time, I think around 5 minutes, but thank you for your time.
Thank you for that, Attorney Twilight. It's fine. 5 minutes is fine. I mean, you've been sharing wonderful insights about the access to water as a right. Just a quick note though, I've been told that my audio is a little bit shaky. Can you please confirm if my audio is not working? Or there's still a background noise? Is there background noise still, or is my audio clear now? Okay. Okay, so a thumbs up. Thank you so much. All right. So, guys, if you have questions, please send them over to the chat. Okay, so there's still a bit of background noise. I apologize for that. I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, I can see that there are 47 participants. Sorry, 37 attendees that we have. And you can send your questions over to the chat. But before we go to our next session, I want other than AI on the chat box, I would like each one of us from the attendees to share your location, where you're joining from. Number 2, the organization you are representing. If it's an office, a utility, if you're a student, please put in your school. Number three, what services or programs in your area, if you are aware, is somehow targeting and helping women in your city or in your town. So let me just give you an example. Where I live, there's a specific weekly, I think it's not weekly, monthly plumbing training, basic plumbing training for women. So instead of requesting for plumbing services, they can check it on their own first, and then obviously that's for free. The training is provided by the local government. So something like that. Again, I want to see on the chat. Number one, your location where you're joining from. Number two, the organization you're representing. And number three, share a program or an initiative in your area where we are targeting, we're helping the marginalized sector, the women and the children in the community. All right. So let those answers come through. I would like to see them. So next to our panelist, I remember she is one of the participants from last year, and now she is an expert in sharing her insight. Um, so we have our pleasure. Let's welcome GM Maria Socorro Paluga, a public servant for more than 2 decades. GM Socorro finished her Doctor of Public Administration at Bukidnon State University in 2019. Her professional work sits at the intersection of gender equality, women's leadership, and sustainable water governance, with a particular focus on integrating gender-responsive approaches in the water sector. She began her career at the Valencia City Water District, rising through the ranks until her appointment as GM General Manager in 2011. So now she currently serves as the president of the PAWAD, the Philippine Association of Water Districts, and chairperson of the Gender and Development Committee of the Mindanao Association of Water Districts, where she advances policies that embed gender equality and social inclusion into water district operations nationwide. All right, so over to you, GM Paluga. Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Christine. And foremost, I would like to congratulate our organizing committee and team for this very significant dialogue, especially on gender and water. So earlier, Attorney Tyla already laid the foundations or the international legal frameworks of the human rights to water. So my topic is about mainstreaming gender responsive approaches in water solutions. So I would like to begin by stating that women have been the backbone of communities for millennia in terms of management of water resources around the nation. Women are frequently the ones who are responsible for ensuring that their families and communities have access to clean water, regardless of whether they live in rural villages or large metropolis. However, contrary to this, in most cases, women have been frequently excluded from the decision-making processes that take place in the water industry. I am in full conviction that we are the catalyst for change, and that change should begin within us. So as Attorney Tyla has shared, there are several legal frameworks that supports water as a human right. But despite robust mandates, however, critical gender gaps continue to persist in water security and governance. These persistent inequalities were highlighted in the Mindanao-based research study entitled From Source to Sink, Exploring Gender Dynamics in Water Access and Use in Mindanao, Philippines, which examined the intersection of gender, water access, sanitation, and governance across communities in Mindanao. This study is a collaboration between the Embassy of Kingdom of Netherlands, the Philippine Association of Water Districts, and the Bukidnon State University, with yours truly as the lead researcher. The study shows that while legal frameworks have significantly advanced gender equality on paper, translating these commitments into everyday practice remains a continuing challenge. One of the most significant findings is the existence of what the study describes as the decision-making divide. Women remain the primary managers of water within households. They are responsible for ensuring that sufficient water is available for cooking, cleaning, laundry, childcare, personal hygiene, and other domestic responsibilities. Yet, despite carrying the greatest responsibility for water management at home, women are often excluded from technical and governance decisions involving water systems. Decisions regarding plumbing repairs, septic tank maintenance, dislodging services, water service coordination, engineering concerns, and infrastructure planning continue to be dominated by men. And why does this matter? This imbalance creates a disconnect between those who experience water challenges most directly and those who make decisions about the water systems. As a result, policies, programs, and operational procedures frequently overlook the everyday realities faced by women. Their practical experiences, priorities, and insights are often absent from planning processes, reducing the effectiveness of water governance and limiting opportunities for more responsive service delivery. The study further reveals that women and girls continue to shoulder the primary burden of water collection. Approximately 7 out of every 10 households rely primarily on women and girls to fetch and manage water for domestic use. This responsibility consumes valuable time and physical energy that could otherwise be devoted to education, income generating activities, professional development, or community participation. The unequal distribution of this labor reinforces existing gender inequalities and limits women's economic and social opportunities. So when water services become unreliable or are interrupted, women experience the greatest consequences. According to the study, 49.3% of adult women reported being directly affected by water loss. Water interruptions increase the amount of unpaid household work women must perform. They often spend additional hours searching for alternative water sources, rationing available supplies, adjusting household routines, and maintaining sanitation despite limited water availability. These additional responsibilities are layered upon existing caregiving obligations, further increasing women's physical, emotional, and mental workload. The burden becomes even more significant when viewed alongside women's economic realities. The study notes that women continue to face greater employment insecurity and economic vulnerability than men because women often have fewer financial resources and more caregiving responsibilities. Disruptions in water services disproportionately affect their ability to maintain household welfare. Higher water costs, unreliable supply, and emergency expenditures place additional financial pressure on women, making water insecurity not only a public utility issue, but also a gender and poverty issue. Beyond water access, the study identifies major concerns regarding sanitation and hygiene. Although overall access to sanitation facilities appears relatively high, the type and quality of sanitation infrastructure remain problematic. The research found that 90.6% of households rely on cesspools rather than properly constructed septic tanks. This widespread dependence on cesspools poses a significant threat to groundwater quality because untreated wastewater can seep into surrounding soil and contaminate water sources. Despite these environmental and public health risks, awareness regarding proper septage management remains limited in many communities. Why this matters? The implications extend beyond environmental protection. Poor sanitation infrastructure directly affects family health, increases exposure to waterborne diseases, and places additional caregiving responsibilities on women who are typically responsible for caring for sick family members. Consequently, sanitation should not be viewed merely as an engineering concern, but as an issue closely linked to gender equality, health, environmental sustainability, and community resilience. The research also emphasizes the importance of menstrual hygiene management within water and sanitation planning. Reliable access to clean water is essential for women and girls to manage menstruation safely and with dignity. However, the study found that 22.6% of respondents declined to discuss menstruation, citing concerns about privacy, embarrassment, or persistent social stigma. This finding demonstrates that menstruation remains a sensitive topic despite its significance to women's health and well-being. Why this matters? Interruption in water services make menstrual hygiene management considerably more difficult. Women and girls may be unable to bathe properly, wash reusable menstruation materials, or maintain appropriate hygiene during menstruation. These challenges affect not only physical health, but also dignity, confidence, educational participation, workplace productivity, and overall quality of life. The findings therefore reinforce that menstrual hygiene management should be recognized as a central component of water and sanitation planning rather than a secondary or isolated women's issues. To address these systemic problems, several evidence-based solutions and gender-responsive approaches have been proposed to transform the water sector into one that is more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. The first priority is institutional strengthening. All water service providers and government agencies are encouraged to institutionalize the regular collection, analysis, and utilization of sex disaggregated data. By separating information according to sex, organizations can better identify differences in access, participation, service impacts, and decision-making roles between women and men. These data enable policymakers and service providers to design interventions that respond to actual community needs rather than assumptions. Closely related to this is the formulation of a dedicated gender and development agenda within water service providers. A comprehensive GAD agenda allows organizations to systematically identify gender issues, establish measurable objectives, allocate resources, monitor progress, and institutionalize gender-responsive programs over the long term. Rather than treating gender as a compliance requirement, organizations are encouraged to integrate gender considerations into their core operational and strategic planning processes. Water service providers are likewise encouraged to move beyond minimum compliance with legal requirements by standardizing gender mainstreaming guidelines throughout their organizations. Gender-responsive principles should be embedded into customer service protocols, engineering operations, emergency response systems, infrastructure planning, communication strategies, and service interruption management. Recognizing that women perform substantially more unpaid labor during water shortages, interruption management protocols should include communication strategies and response mechanisms that specifically address the needs of women as primary household water managers. Strengthening community engagement is another important strategy. Water service providers should establish feedback mechanisms that intentionally reach women and encourage their active participation. Consultation activities, customer satisfaction surveys, community dialogues, and participatory planning sessions should ensure that women's voices are represented and considered equally in organizational decision-making. Increasing women's participation not only improves service responsiveness, but also enhances accountability and community trust. On a practical and community level, transformative approaches include providing skills training for women in basic plumbing, minor repairs, sanitation maintenance, and water system operations. Traditionally viewed as male-dominated technical fields, these skills create opportunities for women to participate more actively in maintaining household and community water systems. Research has shown that involving women in these technical roles improves the functionality, sustainability, and responsiveness of water systems while simultaneously expanding opportunities for leadership, employment, entrepreneurship, and community participation. Additional targeted interventions include establishing designated public hygiene areas within every local government unit where uninterrupted access to clean water is ensured, particularly for women and girls during emergencies or prolonged service interruptions. These facilities would provide safe spaces for bathing, washing, reusable menstrual materials, and maintaining personal hygiene during periods when household water access is limited. Finally, the proposed National Mandatory Septage Management and Dislodging Regulation Act seeks to institutionalize periodic dislodging every 3 to 5 years to ensure proper maintenance of sanitation systems nationwide. The proposal also recommends requiring GPS tracking for dislodging operators to prevent illegal dumping of untreated waste and establishing public transparency portals where dislodging schedules, service providers, and compliance information can be accessed by the public. These measures aim to improve environmental protection, safeguard groundwater quality, strengthen regulatory accountability, and increase public confidence in sanitation management systems. Taken together, these institutional reforms, community-based initiatives, infrastructure improvements, and policy recommendations demonstrate that achieving sustainable water governance requires more than engineering solutions alone. It requires governance systems that recognize the different experiences of women and men, promote inclusive participation, and ensure equitable access to safe water and sanitation for everyone. When gender equality is fully integrated into water governance, services become more responsive, communities become more resilient, and development outcomes become more sustainable. Ultimately, these combined strategies aim to ensure that where water equitably flows, gender equality follows. Madakel, salamat.
Thank you so much, GM Socorro. It's really wonderful to see practical insights of water districts doing their best to promote women. In terms of gender, it's really good to see that you have these basic training skills for open for the women of your local community. I actually have questions, but obviously we're opening the session for Q&A. Currently, we have about 30 something participants. And if you guys have questions, please send them over to the chat. We'll be very happy to answer them. All right. So before we go to their questions, maybe my question first, GM. So you said, you presented a lot of um basic approaches, right, for women. I'm just gonna open my video. I think my audio is not working better, I hope. um you said there are like basic training, plumbing skills for women, right? I'm pretty sure it didn't start as glamorous. So can you maybe share your experience from inception, like what triggered it, what kind of pushed your water district to do it and to implement it? I mean, because for me, if your water district can do it, all water district can follow. So please take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Christine, for that question. Actually, the first trigger is the appreciation of the roles of women, especially in water. Personally, I know that women should have skills in basic plumbing because we are the one who uses water more. We do the cooking, we do the cleaning of the house. We're so particular in water should be available in our comfort room. So as a woman, I know the need. So as a general manager, I also appreciated having these skills learned, not only from my employees, all women employees in Valencia City Water District, but also the women water warrior that I created in the community, so that we have, considering the size of the water district and the big community that water district could not just attend so easily, the problems on water connections or leakages. So women could just easily and repair all leaks that are coming from their faucet. So they don't need to really call the office if they have these basic skills in repairing their water services. And also, I have encountered complaints that since women are left at home and if they have to contact male plumbers, then there are some issues cropping up. So I don't want that to happen in family or relationships of husband and wife just because of the leaking water.
Very well said. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go wrong if that
Yes.
happens. I mean, looking at how this is why I'm really excited about this topic, is that I've been working a lot with water utilities. And what can you somehow like a warning for water districts? I mean, where's the pressure points? How hard is it to start in this kind of how hard would it be for water districts to start this initiative if it is?
I think it wouldn't be so hard if we appreciate data. It would not be so hard for water districts if they recognize the women's skills and women's knowledge on water. Um, Looking into the national numbers of women leaders in the water industry, we are not even 50-50 or gender equal in terms of general managers in the Philippines. We are, I think, 66 or 70-30, and hopefully to increase within the next years. So women's perspective on water is also different. And we have those traditional mindset of water as a male-dominated agency. But now we have already women rising in the water industry that uh, recognizing women power and women's influence on water would not be so hard. It would be, in fact, very helpful in the water industry operation.
Let's talk about mindset. And Attorney Twyla, if you can also, join in the conversation, please just speak. So talking about mindset, you said obviously women thinks a lot more differently in terms of these things, right? Just want to give you an example. Last year I went to a wastewater plant in Lusaran in Cebu City. Um, One question that, I mean, obviously in this kind of environments, it's very male dominated. I've never seen one female even in that plant. So my question is to her, she's the managing director of some sort. My question, ma'am, how are we promoting women? So do you have any programs for women to join your organization or the services, or maybe take part, maybe volunteer, right? But her question is, they've been offering the same services, they've been offering it for free to the local community, but no one is joining. No female is joining. The reason is the mentality of the local community is that it's too hard for us. We don't want to do the desludging or the wastewater roles because it's not for us women. I would rather cook at home, wait for the husband. So all that kind of mentality. So for you, GM, and for you, Attorney Twyla, how can we somehow um change this mindset if we can?
Okay, Christine, may I share a study of the MWSS, which actually has inspired me to do the research study also in Mindanao. During their launching, the research found out that women or girls left at home don't want their septic tank dislodged by men. Uh, of course, for safety, also for the women left at home. So, with that result, the water provider and the sanitation provider employed uh, women within the team so that there would be women or ladies or girls in the team that would dislodge the households. So I think that also helps. Uh, Even if tayo, di ba, if we are left at home and there is the dislodging team and there are like around 5 men coming to your houses, we would feel unsafe.
That is true. That is true. Very much. One time I was here not related to water, but I live alone. And so people from my connection was down for quite a bit. And so three men went to my condo and were like, okay, don't you have any female in your team? I was like, oh, okay. A little bit, a little bit feeling weird, but yes, I understand that situation. How about you, Attorney Twyla, and any thoughts on that?
Um, One of my favorite articles in CEDAW is Article 5 on eliminating or addressing harmful gender stereotypes. And it's still a continuing work and an obligation of states. And thinking about your question, I'm thinking about how do we really change mindsets? How do we change the way women and men think about the norms, the roles, their relationship, what women are meant to do, what men are meant to do, what all these things are affecting the opportunities that women are able to access. So the reason why they are not in these spaces because culture, society, expectations are telling them these are spaces not for you. These are spaces that do not welcome you. And if you go to these spaces, you will be faced with violence, discrimination, stigma, etc. So basically, if you want to address that, and I think it's the whole project of gender mainstreaming is to really first identify where are the women in these spaces. And when we see, like as GM said, women are absent, women are invisible, and if we already see that, and there are studies that saying that women are absent, and then we ask the next question, why are they absent? What's preventing women from participating in these spaces? And you mentioned earlier that there's a risk of violence, there's the risk of harassment. So one of the efforts being done is to have as female staff, or if you have those kinds of, for example, if you have a training that's all men, or mostly 95% men would be attending. As a woman, you would not be really feeling safe in that space. So you would be judged and you would also be subjected to a lot of sexual harassment. So why not create, if you see that that's a problem, then why not create a women-only space? Or if the issue is that women are not able to attend because they are taking care of their children, and most of the women that we would really want to target are those who are doing chores in the household, thinking about water. So they are also the ones with children. So it also means that if there's a training, they would be having their children. If the training will not accommodate the children, then they will not be participating. So first is we look at where are the women, then we examine why are the women not here? What are the barriers? And then the third step would be addressing these barriers. So basically, we go into programming that is gender responsive, and basically not just gender responsive. We transform gender transformative. We transform the systems itself so that the gaps would be addressed already. And it starts with recognizing how our gender norms, our stereotypes are affecting women's participation and decision making, and even the way government is doing its own policies and programming.
Interesting, interesting. I mean, Attorney Twyla, I know you're working with local communities as well. What are, maybe you can give us some stories of, ano ba yung mga interesting hiccups in terms of promoting um uh these services to women for communities? Ano ba yung, which areas are we having a problem with or having issues with? Or maybe it might take a long time for these specific communities to accept that these services should be welcome.
We should also take at it from an intersectional lens, and it differs in terms of context. And I think GM would have more interesting stories that are really grounded. But perhaps what I can share would be um it different contexts, we look at also different identities. Like for example, water and rights to water, it's very close to indigenous people's communities, so they would have more articulate in terms of protecting and also accessing, and also protecting their water resources. So they have more active participation, and women are at the front lines in these cases. But there would be other communities as well wherein water, or as mentioned, water in terms of collection would be for women, but in terms of decision and the technical part for women, this is in their areas that stereotypes are very strong. And I think that is where that you have to create mechanisms in order to address that. So I think one is to really look at the context that you're working in. what are the gender dynamics as well as cultural dynamics in place, what are the roles of the different participants, and how do we navigate so that we'll be able to send the message across that water is a right to everyone, but then it's different for women and for girls. And there has to be more to be done in order to ensure participation, not just women and girls, but also those who are vulnerable and marginalized. So I think that's one thing I can add. No, and of course, the almost barriers in hiccups in terms of participation would be women's reproductive care and labor. It's almost always preventing many women from participating and also being heard in terms of decision making. Because if you can't participate, your insights will not be taken into consideration in terms of the decision making process. So we address how we will redistribute recognized and paid care work so that we can ensure participation of women. And for I think water districts, if they really want to hear their women, and I think it's a good practice in terms of JM in her studies to really ensure women's participation, and that takes into consideration their unpaid care work. Go where they are. If it means nandun sa kung saan sila naglalaba, where they're doing their laundry, or if it means providing budget for their children to attend, or scheduling it on a Saturday or a Sunday where government agencies usually do not have office, but it's the most time that they can participate, then we should be able to accommodate that because we are going to be responsive to their needs and we can have their full participation.
That's right. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. If the training, the basic training, for example, maybe we can do it on a Saturday where the women are mostly have extra time, right? What can you say about that, GM?
Yes, that's true. Women could not be so available during weekends because they have to tend and take care of their children at home. So actually, I started with training on basic plumbing first with my employees, so that my employees would understand that it would be easier to. It's just the mindset that it's so hard to use pliers or equipments for checking the leakages or repairing the leakages. But uh, at first I learned it myself first so that I could tell them that it's not hard. So when I did it myself. I did the repair. Then I told the women in the organization that you can do it because I could do it. And then we extended it to the communities, but only those volunteers who could come during our training, because also it's so hard for women to do repairs when they are not supported also with the tools and materials necessary for the repair. So again, that's a budget that would entail, especially in repairing. But the budget for the materials is less than having the skills, because when you ask for a plumber, they would charge you high because you do not know, but then the work is so easy. So when they just charge so high because they make it seem that it's hard, but actually the repair, the connection of the coupling is just as easy as what we are doing, women's could do.
Better to use that for something else, that money.
Yes, yes.
We have another question for you, GM. So this is from Myra Tambor. So as the PAWAD president, do you have a gender responsive framework for water districts? And that's a very good question.
Okay, Myra. So as a president of the PAWAD, my term is 2026 and 2027. So when I started as a president, I started with the vision of equal decision making for men and women. So because the previous previous administration, you can see really a distinct number of men in the officers and then a few numbers of women. So when I see it, I really tried to appoint more or equal numbers of women and men in the executive council. And with that's the very start. And then we have a very active gender and development committee chair, a woman leader also coming from Baao Water District. And we have several gender agenda for the next 2 years. We have trainings for executives and trainings especially on even the basic concepts of God. We have started that. And right now also I'm doing the Visayas research study. After Mindanao, I am now doing the Visayas research study. So it's actually I am very active in gender and development, and that's one of the agenda that I would really like to pursue in my term.
That's a very interesting question and answer. I mean, as I mentioned, to you, GM, with with the water utilities that we're working with, most of them are, aside from male dominated, there is, you can see a minimum youth participation as well. Um, is that somehow part of the framework as well, empowered, like promote youth as in water districts?
Oh, it's actually an advocacy, especially on our environment, that we would like to uh, coordinate and collaborate with the youth in the community for tree growing activities. And here in Valencia City Water District, all on-the-job training students, before they finish their trainings, they have to visit the watershed and plant their own trees, so that they would also have that idea that we are not just extracting water, but we are nurturing the environment to provide us more water for the next generation.
That's nice. That's a very good advocacy, and I hope a lot of local communities would adopt this as well. Um, all right. So we have another question from Hailey Jesus Agonafer. I'm not sure if we can ask participants to open their camera and also speak, but is that possible here in the screen? If not, maybe I can just read his question. Maybe you, Attorney Twyla and GM. Okay, we can. All right. So, I'm calling on. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but Hailey Jesus Agonafer, maybe you can um open your camera so we can see your face. Are you in the chat still? All right. Okay. If not, the question is there a guideline or framework that indicate how much percent of women should benefit from a development? Is there a specific number? What's a good number? Maybe Attorney Twyla, you could go first.
I'm trying to recall what's provided under Magna Carta of Women. So there are different provisions there, and I think it differs for women in. This is more on representation, so I'm not looking at. I'm wondering if the question is about representation in terms of number, or is it about how women benefit from the development
It's
in
more of a
general?
benefit from the question, but you can touch on both if you want.
Yeah. So in terms of Magna Carta of Women, it sets a specific representation of women in development councils at the local level. A specific number is required in the civil service as well. In terms of women who are responding to cases of violence. So in the span of 5 years from the adoption of Magna Carta of Women, it says that it should increase around 50%, etc. And I think we are slowly going there, and even for the mid-level civil service servants, that's also going up for 50% something. And in terms of development, I think the answer would be women should be able to benefit 100% from development projects, no? And that's how you can achieve that is when women are taken into consideration and if gender mainstreaming is really followed in the whole development process, no? But that, of course, is more of a dream rather than a reality. So I'm also conscious that that my response is more of a dream. And if you're going to ask me where you can find that, in terms of it says 100%, but I will just refer to the human rights documents or human rights instruments that says women should be able to fully enjoy rights. There's no percentage that you only get to enjoy 50% of rights. It says 100, and that should be the goal of human rights.
And that should be the case 100%. I mean, for all projects, women, children should benefit from it 100%. So just to maybe before we go to the last question, we're running out of time, but before we go to the last question, I just give you an example. With the project that we have currently, so as I mentioned, we are partnering water districts to different countries as well. We're partnering cities even. We're even partnering water organizations. Now, whenever we get somehow an interest from a specific utility, a country, a city, we always ask them that there should be 30% of participation from women or at least one youth. So obviously, most organizations it's male dominated still, but I'm very happy to report that I am seeing a good trend of women um participating in these selection process. So one of the many priorities of the Asian Development Bank is to empower women and being able to represent them as well in these projects. Okay, so too much of talking. Now, maybe just one last question to you, GM. From Myra, again, in the board of directors, there's a specific women sector representative. How do you capacitate this board directors?
Okay, thank you again, Myra, for this very active engagement in this dialogue. Yes, there's a representation coming from the women's sector. In fact, under the women's sector, there are also male appointed. So, but anyway, how they are capacitated, they have to join trainings and seminars so that they could be empowered, and considering that board of directors are very important officers in the local water district because they are the decision makers. So they should be well informed of the legal frameworks and the GAD agenda. And considering also that the board of directors approve the budget of the local water district, so they should have a good insights on gender and development. And as to how general managers should be also active and by sending their board of directors to available trainings and available seminars so that they could really bring the voices of the women in their community.
Thank you. Thank you so much, GM. I hope we answered your questions. Not too much, but I hope the conversation sparked a little bit of let's say curiosity, and obviously I hope it sparked the debate that how important it is for women to have the same access and right to water. So before we wrap up, I'd like to take a few minutes to share, a synthesis of today's discussion. Number one, water security and gender equality are deeply interconnected. We cannot achieve SDG 6 on clean water and sanitation without advancing gender equality. That's a must. And number two, 17, SDG 17 is partnerships. It reminds us that solutions require collaboration among governments, the public sector, academia, and even the civil society. So again, that's what this session is all about. And I think everybody has a good takeaway from this session. All right, and thank you again to Attorney Twyla for your time, and also GM for this wonderful sharing of knowledge. And I hope we can get to do this more often, giving practical insights to everybody. It's really wild that some people really don't know what we're doing on the background for women. So it's really good to share this publicly as well. Okay, so to officially close our program, we now turn over to Dr. Michelle Palumbarit, Director of UP Cephal Philippines. Dr. Michelle, please take it away.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Hayo. We all have witnessed that this session has explored how women's voices could be heard and recognized, particularly on matters on equal access to water. But more than the recognition of their voices, this session also highlighted the capabilities and capacities of women to empower and inspire other women and girls to demand equal access to water and work together to find ways to make water accessible to everyone. We've learned a lot from the insights of our speakers, particularly from Attorney Ruben of the Commission on Higher Human Rights. We learned that women and girls suffer undernourishment and nutrition, and unfortunately, these are exacerbated by the impacts of climate change. But it is good to hear that the CHR now is in consultation with women groups for the ASEAN Declaration and on the right to safe, clean, and sustainable environment. I took note of her wonderful reflections, and one of which is really to pursue intersectional approaches to understand the problem comprehensively, because there are barriers, socio-culturally and structurally speaking, that hinder the active participation of women to resources and governance and water management. And also from GM Maria Paluga, we learned that women remain the primary managers of water, and the technical decisions are still male dominated. And it is also unfortunate to learn that more women are affected by water loss compared to men. I also took note of her wonderful suggestions, one of which is really the provisions of facilities which provide equal access to water for women and girls, and also an unwavering support to the proposed policy on the National Septage Management and Dislodging Regulation Act. So these are wonderful suggestions, and I hope that this webinar is just the beginning of the many conversations that we will have, particularly on equal access to water by women and girls. So I'd like to extend my thanks to our experts, Attorney Ruben and GM Maria Paluga, for their knowledge, insights, and wonderful reflections. And also to Dr. Ibru, the Associate Director of Cephal Global Network. I always appreciate your unwavering support to the events of Cephal Philippines. And of course, to Ms. Hayo for excellently moderating this event. And for sure, you will be again invited in our future events, particularly related to water. So to all our panelists, our speakers, and our participants, thank you all for coming, and see you again in the future events of Cephal Philippines. Thank you. Back to you, Ms. Hayo.
All right, I think thank you. I'll take your word on that. I'll see you then next year, huh? All right. Thank you again for joining the session. It's been wonderful session again. Again, I'm Christine Hire from the Asian Development Bank. All right. So have a good rest of the day, everybody. Bye bye.